The coffee shop on Maple Street. Maya hadn't thought about Daniel Chen in years. Not really. Not in the way that counted, where his name would surface in her mind unbidden, or where she'd wonder what he was doing on a random Tuesday afternoon. High school had been 15 years ago, and she'd moved on, built a life, a career as a freelance graphic designer, a small apartment with good light, a routine that felt comfortable, if not exactly thrilling. But sometimes, late at night, when she couldn't sleep, she'd remember the way he used to lean against his locker, reading fantasy novels between classes, completely oblivious to the world around him. She'd remember how his eyes would light up when he talked about the stories he was writing, and how she'd never quite managed to tell him that she'd read every single one he'd posted online under his pseudonym. She'd had such a crush on him. The quiet, hopeless kind that teenage girls nurture in the spaces between words, built from glances across the cafeteria and the few times they'd been paired together for group projects. He'd been kind to her, funny in an understated way, but she'd been invisible to him, just another classmate, another face in the crowded hallways of Lincoln High. The coffee shop on Maple Street was new, or at least new to Maya. She'd been coming here for 3 weeks now, ever since discovering it on a morning walk when her usual place had been too crowded. It was the kind of space that felt intentional, exposed brick walls, mismatched vintage furniture, plants hanging in macrame holders by the windows. The kind of place that served oat milk lattes and played old vinyl records at just the right volume. She'd claimed the corner table as her own, the one near the window where afternoon light pooled on the worn wooden surface. This was where she did her best work, her laptop open, sketches scattered around her, the low hum of conversation providing a gentle soundtrack to her thoughts. It was a Thursday in early October when she saw him. He was standing at the counter, wearing a navy sweater and jeans, his hair a bit longer than it had been in high school, but still with that same slight curl at the ends. He was talking to the barista, smiling at something she'd said, and Maya felt her heart do something complicated in her chest. Daniel Chen, here in her coffee shop. She looked down at her laptop immediately, her face flushing hot. This was ridiculous. She was 33 years old, not 16, but her hands were shaking slightly as she pretended to focus on the logo design in front of her, some boutique hotel that wanted something elegant but approachable. Maya Holloway. She looked up. He was standing beside her table, holding a ceramic mug, his expression caught between surprise and something that might have been pleasure. "Daniel," she said, and was grateful her voice came out steady. "Wow, hi, I thought that was you. I almost didn't say anything. Didn't want to be that guy who mistakes strangers for people from the past. But," he gestured vaguely, smiling. "It's really you. It's really me," she confirmed, smiling back. "Do you? Would you want to sit?" He glanced at his watch, then nodded. "I've got about 20 minutes before a call." "Yeah, that would be nice." He settled into the chair across from her, and Maya closed her laptop slightly, creating space between them and her work. Up close, she could see the ways time had changed him. Fine lines at the corners of his eyes, a maturity to his features that hadn't been there at 18. He looked good, really good. So, he said, wrapping his hands round his mug. 15 years. What have you been doing with your life? They talked easily, more easily than Maya would have expected. She learned that he'd gone to college in Portland, majored in English with a minor in computer science, and now worked remotely for a tech company while trying to finish his first novel. He'd moved back to their hometown 6 months ago to be closer to his parents after his father had a health scare. Nothing serious, he assured her. But it made me realize I'd been putting off coming home for too long. And honestly, the city was getting exhausting. I missed trees, real fall weather, coffee shops that aren't trying so hard to be Instagram worthy. Maya laughed. Well, this one might be trying a little bit. Maybe, but it feels genuine. That's rare. He took a sip of his coffee, then asked, "What about you? Are you still here, or did you come back too?" She told him about college in Chicago, her early years working for a design firm, the leap into freelancing 5 years ago. How she'd moved back home 3 years ago when her lease had ended and she'd realized she could work from anywhere. How she'd expected to feel like she was moving backward, but instead had found a kind of peace in the familiar streets. The slower pace. I get that, Daniel said. There's something about this place. It gets into your bones. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it and sighed. That's my reminder. I have to take this call. He stood, but hesitated. Would you? I mean, are you here often? Maybe I could buy you coffee sometime. Actually sit and talk, not just 20 minutes before work obligations. I'm here most afternoons, Maya said, trying to keep her voice casual. Usually from around 2 to 5. Tomorrow, he asked. I could come by around 3. Tomorrow works. After he left, Maya sat very still for a long moment, staring at the place where he'd been sitting. Then she opened her laptop and tried to focus on elegant but approachable hotel logos, but the work felt impossible now. All she could think about was the way Daniel's eyes had crinkled when he smiled, and how strange it was that 15 years could disappear so quickly. He came back the next day at 3 on the dot, and the day after that, and the one after that. It became a routine, easy as breathing. He'd arrive, get his coffee, black, no sugar, the same order every time, and settle into the chair across from her. Sometimes they'd talk while she worked, his presence somehow making her more productive rather than less. Sometimes they'd close their laptops entirely and just exist in conversation, the hours slipping by unnoticed until the late afternoon light started to fade. Maya learned the rhythms of his expressions, the way he'd tilt his head when he was thinking hard about something, the soft laugh he'd give when he was genuinely amused versus the polite chuckle he used for weak jokes. She learned that he was vegetarian now, that he ran every morning at 6, that he had a ridiculous collection of vintage science fiction paperbacks that he refused to get rid of despite their deteriorating condition. "They smell like used bookstores," he explained one day, "like possibility and other people's memories. I can't throw that away." She told him things she rarely shared with anyone, about the loneliness of freelancing, the way some days she wouldn't speak to another person from morning to night, about her complicated relationship with her mother, who kept asking when she'd find a real job and settle down, about the novel she'd started writing in college and never finished, how it sat in a folder on her desktop, a monument to abandoned ambitions. "Why didn't you finish it?" Daniel asked. Maya shrugged. "I guess I decided I wasn't a writer, that I was better at visual things, design and color and shape. Words felt too hard." "Words are hard," Daniel said. "They're supposed to be. That's not a reason to give up on them." 3 weeks into their renewed friendship, Daniel showed her some pages from his novel. He pulled them up on his laptop one afternoon, nervous in a way she hadn't seen him before, his fingers drumming against the table. "You don't have to read it now," he said quickly. "Or at all, really. I just thought you mentioned you liked fantasy, and I value your opinion." Maya read 20 pages while he pretended to work on something else, stealing glances at her face. The story was beautiful, about a cartographer trying to map an empire that changed its borders every night, where geography was subject to collective belief rather than physical law. The prose was elegant, the ideas clever, but what struck her most was the loneliness threaded through it, the ache of someone trying to make sense of an unstable world. "Daniel," she said when she finished, "this is really good. Like, really good." He looked up, and she could see the vulnerability in his eyes. The way artists always look when showing their work to someone whose opinion matters. "You think so? I know so. How much more do you have?" "About 200 pages, maybe halfway done. Can I read the rest?" He sent her the file that night. Maya stayed up until 3 in the morning reading, curled up on her couch with her laptop, completely absorbed. When she finally closed it, her eyes burning with exhaustion, she felt the way she used to feel finishing great books as a teenager, like she'd been somewhere else entirely and was reluctant to return. She texted him without thinking, just finished. "I'm in awe. This needs to exist in the world." His response came a minute later. "You're up late, couldn't put it down." That might be the best thing anyone's ever said to me. After that, something shifted. The boundary between friendship and something else started to blur, so gradually Maya couldn't pinpoint when it happened. There was the afternoon he brought her favorite pastry from the bakery down the street because she'd mentioned being too busy to eat lunch. The evening they stayed at the coffee shop until closing, so deep in conversation about childhood dreams and adult compromises that they didn't notice the staff starting to clean around them. The Saturday, he texted asking if she wanted to check out the farmer's market together. And they'd spent 3 hours wandering between stalls, Daniel carrying her canvas bag filled with produce and fresh bread. She found herself thinking about him constantly, wondering what he'd think about the article she was reading, the song she'd heard, the way the sunset looked from her apartment window. She started dressing a bit more carefully on the days she knew she'd see him, wearing the blue sweater he'd once complimented, making sure her hair looked deliberately tousled rather than just messy. This was dangerous territory. She'd been here before, 15 years ago, nursing a crush that led nowhere. She should protect herself, maintain some distance. But it was so hard when he looked at her like she was the most interesting person in the room. When his face lit up every time he saw her, when their conversations felt like coming home. One evening in early November, Daniel asked if she wanted to go for a walk. The coffee shop was too crowded, he said, and the weather was still nice enough that they could be outside without freezing. They walked through the old neighborhood near their high school, past houses Maya had forgotten she remembered. The trees were mostly bare now, leaves crunching under their feet, the air crisp and smelling of wood smoke. "Do you ever think about high school?" Daniel asked suddenly. "Sometimes," Maya said carefully. "Why?" "I was thinking about it the other day. About how I barely knew you then, which seems insane now. You were in my English class junior year, right? With Mrs. Patterson. And chemistry. We were lab partners for that unit on acids and bases, were we?" He laughed. "I don't remember that at all. I was probably too lost in my own head. I spent most of high school either reading or worrying about what everyone thought of me. You seemed so confident," Maya said before she could stop herself, "like you didn't care what anyone thought." Daniel stopped walking and turned to look at her, genuine surprise on his face. "Are you serious? I was terrified all the time. I thought everyone saw through me, saw how weird and awkward I was. You weren't weird. You were interesting. Well, you were invisible to me in the worst way," he said. "Not because you weren't worth seeing, but because I was so caught up in my own anxiety that I missed everything important. I missed you." Something in Maya's chest tightened. They'd started walking again, slower now, and their hands kept almost brushing, an electric near contact that was driving her quietly insane. "Can I tell you something?" Maya said. "Something embarrassing. Please. I had the biggest crush on you in high school. Like ridiculous, teenager. Write your first name with his last name in notebooks, crush." Daniel stopped walking again. "You did?" "Yep." "You were completely oblivious, which was probably for the best. I was way too shy to ever do anything about it." "Maya." His voice was soft. "I'm not oblivious anymore." Her heart was beating so hard she was sure he could hear it. "What does that mean?" "It means I should have said this weeks ago, but I kept talking myself out of it, thinking maybe I was reading things wrong, or moving too fast, or ruining a good thing." He turned to face her fully. and in the glow of the streetlight, his eyes were dark and serious. "I'm falling for you. I think I've been falling for you since that first day in the coffee shop, maybe even before that, in some weird retroactive way. Like I'm falling for who you were then and who you are now simultaneously." Maya couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only stare at him and feel the moment stretching out, perfect and fragile. "Say something," Daniel said nervously. "Please say something because I'm dying here." Instead of speaking, she kissed him. It was gentle at first, tentative, like they were both afraid of breaking something precious. But then his hands came up to cup her face, and she leaned into him, and it deepened into something that felt like all the years of almost meeting, almost knowing, finally collapsing into this single point of contact. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard, Daniel was smiling. "So I'm guessing you feel the same way." "You're still oblivious," Maya said, and kissed him again. They walked back to her apartment, hands intertwined, talking in the giddy, disjointed way of people who'd just crossed an important threshold. At her door, he kissed her goodnight like he was savoring it, like he had all the time in the world. "I'll see you tomorrow," he said. Same place, she confirmed. "Same time, it's a date." Finally, officially, a date. Maya watched him walk away, then went inside and stood in her kitchen, just grinning at nothing. She felt like she was 17 again, except better, because she knew how to hold this now, knew how to be brave with it. Later, lying in bed, she thought about all the small choices that had led here, coming back to her hometown, finding that coffee shop, deciding to say hello instead of pretending she hadn't seen him. How easily it all could have gone differently, but it hadn't. And now, somehow, impossibly, the boy from her high school dreams was becoming something real, something better than dreams, a person with flaws and fears and a half-finished novel about maps, a person who saw her, really saw her, in a way she'd been waiting for her whole life. Maya fell asleep, smiling, already looking forward to tomorrow afternoon, to the coffee shop on Maple Street, where the light would pool golden on their table, and Daniel would walk in right at 3 o'clock, and everything would be exactly, perfectly, where it was supposed to be.